The Pacific Ocean in 1944 lay vast and endless beneath a silvered sky, a theater of silence broken only by the distant rumble of engines and the rhythmic churn of waves against steel hulls, where unseen hunters stalked prey through the deep. It was in this boundless sea that one of the most extraordinary encounters of the Second World War would unfold. An encounter between a lone American submarine, the USS Archerfish, and the largest warship ever built at that time, the Japanese aircraft carrier Shinano. The story of how that submarine, operating in obscurity and guided by instinct, patience, and careful observation, brought down a vessel of unimaginable size and power, is one of the most remarkable in naval history. An episode that encapsulates the vast contrasts of the Pacific War: technology and human will, secrecy and discovery, pride and downfall. The tale begins not with a battle, but with an idea forged in the desperate corridors of Imperial Japan's naval command. In the early 1942s, Japan's fleet stood at the peak of its power. The thunder of Pearl Harbor had echoed across the world, and the rising sun seemed unstoppable across the Pacific. Yet beneath that triumph, Japanese engineers were already dreaming of something greater. Ships so vast, so formidable, that no enemy could challenge them. From this ambition came the Yamato-class battleships, Yamato, Musashi, and a third hull that would be converted to become the Shinano. She was born in secrecy at the Kure Naval Arsenal, her keel laid down under wartime urgency, and soon after Japan's losses at Midway in 1942, the hull was hastily converted to a carrier. The Shinano was a leviathan, measuring 872 feet from bow to stern and displacing approximately 72,000 tons. She was a floating fortress, among the most heavily armored carriers built, though she would never fully prove that advantage. Her flight deck stretched across her immense body like a steel runway to the horizon, and within her cavernous hangars were workshops, fuel depots, and ammunition stores capable of supporting hundreds of aircraft. But for all her grandeur, the Shinano was also a secret, born of desperation. Her construction was rushed, her purpose concealed, and few, even within Japan's own navy, knew of her existence. She was to be Japan's last hope, a hidden weapon to tip the balance back in their favor as the tide of war turned against them. Yet the sea is an unforgiving keeper of secrets, and fate had other designs. Far to the east, beneath the waves, another world existed. A darker, colder world, where the men of the United States Navy's submarine force fought a different kind of war. The submariners lived in steel tubes no wider than a railway carriage, packed with machinery, torpedoes, and the constant stench of diesel and sweat. They endured heat, hunger, and fear in equal measure, stalking merchant convoys and warships alike through the silent depths. By late 1944, the submarine campaign against Japan was one of relentless attrition. American subs had sunk thousands of tons of enemy shipping, strangling Japan's supply lines and isolating its island strongholds. Among those submarines was the USS Archerfish, a Balao-class boat that had already served quietly and uneventfully under different commanders. Her new captain, Commander Joseph F. Enright, had something to prove. Enright was an experienced officer, but his earlier command had been marred by frustration and missed opportunities. He had been forced to step down, haunted by doubt and the feeling that he had failed both his crew and himself. When he was given a second chance with Archerfish, it was a quiet redemption, a chance to write a new story. In November 1944, the Archerfish patrolled the waters off Japan's coast, a dangerous zone thick with patrols and air cover. Her crew, 50-odd men hardened by the monotony and tension of life below, had grown used to disappointment, days of searching with no contact, Nights of uneasy silence, punctuated by the occasional sonar ping or distant rumble of ships they could not reach. On the night of November 28, something unusual happened. As Archerfish surfaced to recharge her batteries beneath a pale moon, her radar operator picked up a faint contact. A large object moving southward along Japan's coast. The reading was strange. The target was enormous, traveling at a speed that surprised the submarine. Enright, studying the data through red-lit gloom, sensed opportunity. Based on the patrol report and subsequent analysis, it is reasonable to assume he recognized the chance to engage a significant target. He ordered Archerfish to shadow the contact. What followed was a chase of extraordinary patience. The submarine trailed the unknown vessel through the night, surfacing and submerging as needed to maintain contact without being detected. Hours passed, and still the shadow moved steadily south. Through the periscope, Enright caught glimpses between waves and darkness, a massive silhouette, its superstructure rising higher than any he had ever seen. He did not know it, but he was observing the Shinano on her maiden voyage, sailing from Yokosuka to Kure for final outfitting. On board the carrier, over 2,000 men worked frantically to complete her even as she moved. Her watertight compartments were unfinished, her pumps untested, and her escorts included 3 destroyers and a sub-chaser. She was powerful in theory, but fragile in truth, a giant not yet ready for war. As the hours wore on, the Archerfish and her quarry played a deadly game of endurance. Each time the submarine tried to maneuver into an attack position, the target would change course, forcing Enright to reposition. The crew whispered their doubts. Was this chase worth the risk? But Enright persisted, trusting his instincts. By midnight, the sea was calm, the moon high, and the Shinano was steaming straight into his path. At 3:17 a.m., based on patrol reports, Enright made his decision. He ordered the submarine to periscope depth and turned her broadside to the target's predicted course. 6 torpedoes were fired from Archerfish, and post-war accounts credit 4 hits on the carrier. The next moments stretched like eternity. Then came the first explosion, deep and muffled. Another followed, then another, until the submarine shook faintly with the echoing thunder of distant destruction. Through the periscope, Enright saw a massive column of water erupt alongside the target. Flames flickered briefly against the night. The Shinano was hit. He whispered that they had succeeded, yet the Archerfish could not linger. He ordered the submarine to dive deep and slip away into the darkness, listening as the Japanese escorts began their desperate but futile search. Depth charges exploded in the distance, but none came close. The submarine crept away, leaving the ocean once again silent. On the surface, the Shinano struggled. The torpedoes had torn open her side below the armor belt, flooding compartments that were not yet sealed. Pumps failed, bulkheads buckled, and the ship's massive weight worked against her. The captain, Toshio Abe, ordered damage control crews to contain the flooding, but the situation worsened with every minute. Water poured into engine rooms and ammunition stores. Electrical systems shorted out, lights flickered, and confusion spread through the corridors. Over the following hours, the carrier's list worsened, and at about 10:18 a.m., she was ordered abandoned and capsized shortly afterwards amid continuing flooding. About 1,435 men perished in the sinking, though exact counts vary slightly. When Enright and the Archerfish returned to base, they reported their attack as usual, unsure of what they had struck. The Navy analysts at Pearl Harbor listened, intrigued by the commander's description of the target's immense size and speed. Based on post-war intelligence and damage assessment, it was later confirmed that Archerfish had destroyed the Shinano, the largest warship ever sunk by a submarine. Enright's quiet patience and precise judgment had achieved what no battleship, no fleet, had managed before. The story of the Archerfish and the Shinano is more than a tale of battle. It is a reminder of how vast the ocean of war truly was, filled with unseen struggles and silent heroes. It tells of technology pushed to its limits, of courage under pressure, of chance encounters that shift the course of history. Post-war analysis indicates that Shinano's incomplete watertight compartments and untested systems contributed to her rapid sinking, which could imply that even the largest and most heavily armored ships were vulnerable when rushed into service. The submarine, once considered a nuisance, had proven capable of felling giants. Today, deep beneath the Pacific, the remains of the Shinano lie entombed in darkness, her armor rusted, her name forgotten by many. Yet for those who know her story, she remains a symbol of ambition and downfall, of the fleeting nature of supremacy at sea. And far above, in the annals of naval history, the name USS Archerfish stands quietly beside her, not as conqueror, but as witness to the moment when the age of giants ended with a single ripple on the surface of an endless sea.